The house felt too quiet now. It was the kind of silence that pressed on the heart, heavy, still, and full of memories. After her mother's funeral, Lena stood in the kitchen holding a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. The morning light fell gently across the table where her mom used to sit. Everything still smelled like her. That mix of lavender soap and warm bread. Her stepfather, Daniel, moved quietly around the house. He wasn't her real father, but he had been there since Lena was 8. He was calm, careful, always gentle with words. When her mom got sick, he never left her side. Now that she was gone, both of them were lost in the same empty house, 2 people with the same grief but not sure how to share it. A faint clink of a spoon stirring coffee. A chair creaks. "Did you sleep?" Daniel's voice broke the silence. It was deep and tired. Lena shook her head. "Not really. I keep hearing her voice, like she's still here." Daniel nodded slowly. "I hear her too sometimes." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The clock ticked louder and Lena's heart felt heavy. She didn't know if she should cry or stay quiet. She looked at him, the man who had been her stepfather, her mother's husband, her family. His eyes looked red, not from lack of sleep but from holding back too much pain. He looked smaller somehow, like grief had taken something from him too. Lena whispered, "It doesn't feel real." He gave a sad smile. "No, it doesn't." He reached out to touch her hand just to comfort her, but something about that touch made her chest tighten. It wasn't wrong, it was soft, kind, but there was something different in it, something unspoken. Faint heartbeat sound, soft and slow. Lena didn't pull away. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the loneliness, maybe it was the warmth she missed. For weeks, her mother's hospital smell and the cold air of the funeral had frozen her inside. But Daniel's hand was warm, real. They stayed like that for a while, silent, connected by loss. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "She wanted us to take care of each other." Lena's throat tightened. I know, the way he said each other lingered in the air. Not heavy, not strange, just full of emotion. She could feel something in his tone, a kind of sorrow that was too deep to name. Soft sigh. The sound of distant rain begins. Later that evening, they sat in the living room with an old photo album. The pictures told a story of a happier time. Birthdays, vacations, laughter around a small table. Lena smiled faintly when she saw her mom's face next to Daniel's. "She loved this one," Daniel said softly, pointing to a photo of the 3 of them at the beach. "You built that little sandcastle, remember?" Lena laughed quietly. "Yeah, she made us stay till sunset just to take that picture." Daniel smiled, but his eyes glistened. "She said it was perfect. Her family." Lena's hand brushed his as they turned the page. A small spark of warmth passed between them, gentle, confusing. She felt her heartbeat quicken, and she looked away quickly. She didn't understand what she was feeling. Maybe it was grief mixing with something else, and something she didn't want to name. Low thunder roll outside, the soft patter of rain on the window. "Do you want to eat something?" Daniel asked after a pause. She shook her head. "Not really hungry," he nodded. "Me neither." The rain grew heavier, drumming softly against the glass. They sat together on the couch, wrapped in the same quiet sadness. Then Daniel said something she didn't expect. "You know, Lena, I don't know how to do this without her." His voice broke at the end, and she looked at him, really looked. He wasn't strong like she always thought. He was human, broken, trying, she whispered. "We'll figure it out, together." Daniel's eyes met hers, and in that second something inside the room changed, a closeness, a kind of warmth that filled the cold spaces between them. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. A small, caring gesture, but her heart reacted before her mind could. The world felt too quiet again, except for the soft rhythm of rain and their slow breaths. Neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. The moment spoke for itself, confusing, gentle, too tender to explain. A deep silence, only the sound of rain and a faint heartbeat. Lena stood up suddenly, breaking the spell. I should go to bed," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "Of course. Try to rest." As she walked to her room, she could still feel the warmth of his hand near her face, still hear the echo of his voice. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, heart racing. The house was still full of memories, but tonight something new had begun, something she didn't understand yet. The sound of rain fades. Soft ticking of the clock returns, a single sigh, and in the other room, Daniel sat alone, staring at the photo of the woman they both loved, and wondering why her daughter's presence suddenly made the loneliness feel different. Soft night ambiance. The low hum of the refrigerator. Distant rain continues outside, softer now. A faint ticking clock in the hallway. Lena couldn't sleep that night. The air felt too heavy, full of thoughts she couldn't name. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's face. Then Daniel's, sad, tired, kind. She turned over in bed, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight fell across her blanket, soft and pale. Her heart wouldn't slow down. In the other room, Daniel sat awake too. He had been staring at the same picture for hours, the one of Lena and her mother laughing together in the garden. The sound of their laughter used to fill this house. How silence lived here instead. He sighed and rubbed his face, whispering to the dark, "You told me to look after her, didn't you?" The house creaked softly as if answering him. Sound of gentle footsteps. Lena opens her door. Lena stepped out quietly, walking toward the kitchen. Maybe tea would help. But when she turned on the dim light, she froze. Daniel was already there. He looked up from his seat at the table, a mug in his hands. "Couldn't sleep either?" She shook her head. "No, it's too quiet." Daniel smiled faintly. "Yeah, too quiet." He poured her some tea and slid the cup toward her. She sat down across from him. For a moment they didn't speak. Only the soft sound of rain filled the silence. Then Lena said quietly, "I miss her so much, Daniel." His eyes softened. "I know. I do too." They talked for a while and about her mom's favorite songs, her silly jokes, how she used to hum while cooking. Slowly their laughter returned, small and fragile. It felt good to talk about her even if it hurt. Chuckle. Distant thunder. "She would have told us to stop being sad," Lena said, smiling through tears. "She would have," Daniel agreed. She hated seeing anyone cry. Lena stared into her cup, watching the steam rise. "You were good to her. She always said you were her peace." Daniel looked down. "She was mine." Their eyes met again and stayed there a little too long. Faint heartbeat sound returns, soft and rhythmic. Lena felt something strange stir inside her chest. Daniel looked different tonight, softer yet somehow stronger. Maybe it was the lighting, maybe the loneliness, but his eyes carried something deeper now, something that pulled her closer. She looked away, trying to steady her breath. "You must be tired," she said softly. "I should be," he replied. "But my mind won't stop." "Same here," he smiled gently. "Maybe we just don't want to be alone." Lena's lips parted, but no words came out. He was right. She didn't want to be alone. Not tonight. The sound of rain fades slightly. A faint ticking clock continues. "Do you want to watch something?" Daniel asked suddenly. "Your mom used to put on old movies when she couldn't sleep." Lena nodded. "Okay." They went to the living room, the one filled with old pictures and the scent of her mother's perfume. Daniel turned on the TV. An old black and white movie flickered softly. They sat side by side on the couch. At first there was a small space between them, but slowly, without meaning to, that space disappeared. Lena leaned slightly toward him, her head brushing his shoulder. Daniel tensed for a moment, then relaxed. She whispered, "Is this okay?" He hesitated, then answered quietly, "Yeah, it's okay." Soft background music from the TV. A faint sigh. As the movie played, Lena's mind wandered. She remembered how Daniel used to braid her hair when she was little, how her mom used to smile watching them. It felt safe back then, pure and simple, but tonight it felt different. The warmth of his shoulder, the sound of his slow breathing. It made her heart race. She didn't know if it was wrong or just human. She whispered, "Everything feels strange without her." Daniel nodded slowly. "It does. It's like we're standing in the same place, but the world moved on." "Yeah," she said softly. "And we're still here, trying to catch up." He turned his head to look at her. Their faces were close, closer than before. The flicker of the TV light danced across their eyes. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Lena felt a lump in her throat. "Daniel!" He blinked as if waking from a dream. Yeah, she didn't finish. She couldn't. Instead, she smiled sadly and looked away. The silence between them was full of things they couldn't say. Low hum. The heartbeat sound grows faint again. When the movie ended, Daniel turned off the TV. "It's late," he said softly. "You should rest." "Yeah," she whispered, standing slowly. But as she turned to go, he reached out, gently catching her wrist. She froze. "Lena," he said quietly. "You're not alone, okay?" Her heart thudded once, heavy and deep. She nodded slowly. "I know." He let go and she walked away, her footsteps soft on the wooden floor. In her room, she leaned against the door again, just like last night. She could still feel where his hand had touched her. She didn't know what was happening between them. Maybe it was grief, maybe it was comfort, or maybe it was something neither of them should want. But as she lay down and closed her eyes, one thought wouldn't leave her mind. For the first time since her mother's death, she didn't feel completely alone. Soft rain fades. A clock ticks. A distant sigh. 3 days had passed since the sleepless night. The house felt a little lighter, though the air still carried the echo of sadness. Lena sat at the kitchen table, a notebook open in front of her. It was her mother's journal. She had found it tucked away inside a drawer, tied with a faded blue ribbon. Her mother had written about everything: recipes, garden notes, little pieces of advice. But on the last page there was something Lena hadn't seen before. "If I go first, tell Daniel and Lena to take care of each other. They're both strong, but they forget they need kindness too." Lena ran her fingers over the words, her chest tightening. Her mother's voice felt so close, almost alive again. Sound of a chair moving. Daniel enters quietly. Daniel stood in the doorway. His shirt was wrinkled and his eyes looked softer than usual. "You found her journal?" he asked. Lena nodded. "She wrote about you." "About us?" He smiled faintly and took a seat across from her. "She used to write everything down. Said it helped her remember who she was." They sat together, reading quietly. Sometimes they smiled, sometimes their eyes filled with tears. It was peaceful, almost comforting, until the silence between them began to stretch again. Lena could feel something unspoken still lingering. The warmth that had once felt like safety now felt confusing. She cleared her throat. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" He looked up. "Of course." "That night when we couldn't sleep, did it feel strange to you?" Daniel froze. The question caught him off guard. He looked away, fingers tightening around his cup. "It did," he admitted softly. "But not because of you. Because I realized how lonely we both were." Lena lowered her gaze. "It scared me. I didn't understand what I was feeling." He nodded. "Me too." For the first time, they spoke honestly, not hiding behind comfort or silence. Daniel sighed. "Your mother trusted me. She'd never forgive me if I let grief turn into something it shouldn't." Lena blinked back tears. "I know. I don't want that either. I just miss feeling close to someone." He reached across the table, not to hold her hand this time, but to place his palm gently on top of hers. Steady, protective. "Then let's stay close, but the right way," he said. She'd want that. A soft breeze rustles the curtains. The house seems to breathe again. That simple moment changed everything. It didn't erase the confusion or the sadness, but it brought a kind of clarity neither had felt in weeks. Later that day, Lena went outside for the first time in days. The garden still smelled of earth and flower, her mother's favorite place. She knelt by the roses, pulling out dry weeds. Daniel joined her quietly, handing her the small watering can. They worked side by side without speaking much. The silence felt different now, not heavy, just calm. Lena said softly, "You kept the garden alive." Daniel smiled. "I tried. She used to say flowers grow better when someone talks to them." Lena laughed quietly. "Then they must have loved her voice," he chuckled too. The sound lighter than before. As they worked, memories returned. Her mother singing while hanging laundry, Daniel fixing the old fence, Lena chasing butterflies across the grass. It was a house that had seen love before loss, and maybe love in a new form, not romantic but human, healing. Soft wind chime sound. That evening, Lena wrote a letter in her notebook. She didn't plan to send it. She just needed to let the words out. Mom, today we talked. I think we're learning how to live again. I still feel lost sometimes, but I'm not afraid anymore. Daniel is trying. So am I. She closed the notebook and smiled faintly. A few days later, Daniel came to her door with 2 cups of tea. I'm going to fix up the attic, he said. Your mom wanted it to be a reading room. Want to help? Lena hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, let's do it. They spent the afternoon moving old boxes, laughing at forgotten photos and silly souvenirs. Dust covered everything, but it felt alive up there, full of memories and new beginnings. When they finished, Daniel sat down, wiping sweat from his forehead. You know, he said softly, she used to say the attic was closest to the sky. She liked that idea. Lena looked up at the window where the sunlight glowed through. I like it too, she said. It feels peaceful here, he smiled. You should make it your space. Read, write. Lena paused. What about you? I'll visit sometimes, he said with a small grin. But it's your turn now, Lena, to make this house yours. Something about those words filled her chest with warmth. For so long, she'd been caught between past and present. But now she felt like she could finally start walking forward. Sound of soft evening wind. Crickets outside. That night, as she stood by the window watching the stars blink above the garden, she whispered, I miss you, Mom. But I think we're going to be okay. In the next room, Daniel turned off the lights and looked at the photo on his nightstand. The one of all 3 of them smiling at the beach. He whispered too, his voice low but full of peace. I'm keeping my promise. A gentle breeze through the open window. The clock ticked softly, fade out. The days were beginning to stretch longer now. Sunlight lingered over the house a little more each evening, spilling across the wooden floor where the dust used to hide. Lena noticed it first one morning when she came downstairs and saw Daniel fixing the curtain rod her mother had always complained about. For a moment it almost felt normal again. She made tea quietly, trying not to disturb him, but Daniel turned, smiling softly. Good morning, he said. His voice no longer sounded as heavy as before. I thought I'd get this done before breakfast. Your mom would have scolded me for waiting this long. Lena smiled too. She would have. She used to say that thing would fall on our heads one day. They shared a small laugh. It wasn't loud, but it was real. For the first time in weeks, laughter didn't feel wrong. It felt like a piece of her mother's warmth had finally returned. After breakfast, Lena went outside to hang laundry. The air smelled fresh, full of damp soil and sunlight. Daniel was in the garage, sorting through tools. They had fallen into a rhythm, not planned, just natural. She studied for her college classes online, and he worked around the house, fixing things her mother had left unfinished. Sometimes they'd meet in the kitchen for tea, talking about small things, what to plant in the garden, which recipe to try next. Other times they said nothing, but the silence no longer hurt. It had changed. It had softened. One evening, Lena stood in the garden watering the roses. She remembered her mother kneeling in the same spot, teaching her how to trim the leaves gently. Plants are like people, her mother had said. They need patience, not force. Daniel came out holding 2 mugs of coffee. You've brought the garden back to life, he said quietly. Lena looked around. The roses were blooming again, red and full. It's strange, she said. I used to think everything would die after she left. But it's all growing, he nodded slowly. Maybe that's her way of staying with us. She smiled, her eyes stinging a little. Maybe it is. They sat together on the small bench near the fence, sipping coffee as the sky turned gold. For a long while, neither spoke. It was peaceful, almost sacred, the kind of stillness that carried both love and memory. Daniel broke the silence first. Lena, I've been thinking I might sell the old workshop. It's too much for me now, but maybe you could use the money for school, for what you really want to do. She looked at him, surprised. Daniel, you don't have to do that. I know, he said with a soft smile. But your mother would have wanted me to. She was proud of you. She used to say you'd do something beautiful with your life. Lena's throat tightened. She said that? All the time, he replied. She'd talk about you like you were her greatest work of art. Tears blurred her vision. She didn't say anything, but she reached out and placed her hand over his. It wasn't the same kind of touch as before. This one carried gratitude, not confusion. He squeezed her hand gently. You'll make her proud, Lena, you already have. The next few days passed with quiet purpose. Lena began writing again, something she hadn't done since her mother's illness. She filled pages with small stories, memories, dreams, feelings she could never say out loud. Sometimes she read them aloud in the attic, her mother's old reading room, while Daniel listened from the doorway. One afternoon, she read him a short piece she had written. It was about loss, but also about love that doesn't end when someone is gone. When she finished, he didn't speak right away. Then he said softly, "That's beautiful." "You have her heart in your words," Lena smiled shyly. "Maybe I'm finally learning how to use it." Something shifted inside both of them that day. The weight of grief began to lift, replaced by something steadier. Peace, acceptance, even quiet hope. They had walked through the hardest parts together, and though the pain hadn't vanished, it no longer controlled them. That night, Lena sat by her window, watching the moon rise. The air was cool and the world felt still. She thought about her mother, about the ache that used to live in her chest like a stone. It was still there, but lighter now, like something she could carry. In the next room, Daniel played an old song on the record player, her mother's favorite tune. The melody drifted through the walls, slow and tender. Lena closed her eyes, letting it wrap around her like a warm blanket. For the first time since the funeral, she whispered, "Thank you," not to anyone in particular, but to the air, to the house, to the life that had somehow continued. Downstairs, Daniel looked up at the same moment. He didn't hear her words, but he felt something, a small shift in the silence, like forgiveness settling into the walls. The clock ticked gently. The music played on, and somewhere between memory and tomorrow, the house began to feel like a home again. When Lena finally went to bed, she didn't lean against the door or cry quietly into her pillow. She simply lay down, closed her eyes, and let herself rest. For once, sleep came easily, soft, deep, and full of light. Morning came softly, with pale sunlight touching the curtains and a quiet breeze moving through the open window. The house was calm now. No heavy air, no cold silence, only the slow rhythm of a new routine. Lena woke early, as she often did these days. The world outside felt gentle, as if time itself had decided to move carefully for her. She walked downstairs and found Daniel already in the kitchen, making breakfast. The smell of toasted bread filled the air. He looked up and smiled, that same quiet smile he had learned to give when words weren't enough. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied, sitting at the table. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," he said. "I was thinking about the workshop. The new owners are coming tomorrow to take a look." Lena stirred her tea slowly. "Are you really going to sell it?" He nodded. "Yes, it's time. I held on to it because I thought it meant keeping a part of her. But she's not in that building. She's here, in the garden, in the music, in us." His words made her chest ache in that sweet, familiar way. She understood him perfectly now. Holding on sometimes meant never healing. After breakfast, they walked together to the workshop. The place looked old but strong, its wooden walls marked with memories. Tools still hung on the wall just where her mother had left them. Dust sparkled in the sunlight streaming through the small window. Lena ran her fingers over the workbench. "She used to paint here, right?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Every afternoon." She said the light in this room made colors honest. Lena could almost hear her mother's laughter echoing through the air. For a moment, she wished she could freeze time right here just to keep that sound alive. Daniel rested a hand on her shoulder. "You know," he said quietly, "I kept some of her old brushes for you. I thought you might want them." She turned to him, eyes soft. "Thank you. I do." They spent the next few hours sorting through boxes, packing things carefully. Every object told a story. A paint-stained apron, a cracked mug with a half-faded flower design, a small wooden bird her mother had carved one summer. Each item carried a piece of her warmth. As they worked, Lena felt something change inside her. The sadness that used to weigh her down now felt like a gentle reminder instead, proof that love had existed here. When they finished, Daniel leaned against the doorway, looking out toward the garden. "Do you ever think she's watching us?" he asked. Lena smiled softly. "I think she is. And I think she's happy." They stood there quietly, the sun touching their faces, the smell of earth and paint mixing in the air. Later that afternoon, Lena went to the attic to write. The room had become her favorite place, full of light, soft dust, and the quiet hum of the outside world. She opened her notebook and began a new story, one about loss and finding peace in unexpected places. Halfway through writing, Daniel called her from downstairs. "Lena, someone's here to see you," she frowned, curious. When she came down, she found a woman standing by the door, smiling warmly. She looked familiar, kind eyes, gentle voice. "Lena," the woman said, "I'm your mother's old friend, Clara. I just came by to check on you both." Lena remembered her, the friend who used to visit during the summers, always bringing her mother small gifts and laughter. She hadn't seen her since before the illness. They sat together in the living room. Clara looked around, nodding approvingly. "You've kept the house beautiful." She'd be proud. Daniel brought tea for everyone, sitting quietly nearby. Clara's gaze softened as she looked at him. "She always said you were her calm," she said gently. "I'm glad you're still here." He smiled faintly. "Trying my best." As they talked, Clara shared stories Lena had never heard before. Stories about her mother as a young woman, about her dreams, and the silly things she used to do. They laughed, they cried, and for a moment it felt as if the house itself was smiling again. When Clara left, she hugged Lena tightly. "You remind me so much of her," she whispered. "You have her light." Lena felt tears sting her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. After she was gone, Daniel stood beside her at the doorway, watching the sun fade behind the trees. "She was good to your mom," he said quietly. "Yes," Lena replied. "And she made me remember something important." "What's that?" "That even when someone's gone, they don't really leave. They live through us, through the things we say, the people we touch, the way we keep going." Daniel looked at her with quiet pride. "Your mother would be proud of you, Lena." That night they sat in the garden again, just like before. The stars were bright and the air carried the faint scent of blooming jasmine. Lena felt peace settle deep inside her chest. Not the kind that comes suddenly, but the kind that builds quietly over time. She turned to Daniel and said softly, "Thank you for not giving up on this house." "On me," he smiled. "I promised her I wouldn't. And I don't break promises." Lena looked up at the stars, her heart calm for the first time in months. "Then I'll keep my promise too," she said. "What promise?" "To live. To make something beautiful again." Daniel nodded, and they both fell silent, letting the night speak for them. The garden swayed gently, the flowers glowing pale under the moonlight. Somewhere a night bird sang a soft note, as if agreeing with her words. For the first time since her mother's passing, Lena felt a quiet certainty that healing didn't mean forgetting and love didn't vanish with loss. It simply changed shape, finding new ways to exist. She closed her eyes and smiled, feeling her mother's presence all around, in the wind, the earth, and the gentle hum of life returning to the home they both had loved. The morning air carried the scent of fresh rain. Dew clung to the grass like tiny pearls, and sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, touching the walls with a quiet gold. Lena stood by the sink, rinsing a cup and watching the world outside come alive. The house no longer felt hollow. It had rhythm again, slow, peaceful, full of small sounds that made it feel alive. Daniel entered with a small box in his hands. He looked almost cheerful, something Lena hadn't seen in him for a long time. "Guess what I found?" he said with a hint of excitement. Lena turned, smiling. "What is it?" He opened the box carefully. Inside were old cassette tapes, neatly labeled in her mother's handwriting. "Her recordings," he said softly. "She used to make these. Music, little voice notes, recipes, even letters she never sent." Lena's heart fluttered. She picked one up and read the label. "To listen when life feels heavy." The ink had faded, but the warmth of the message hadn't. Daniel looked at her. "Want to play it?" She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. He placed the tape into the old player that sat on the shelf near the dining table. The moment he pressed play, a soft crackle filled the room, and then her mother's voice. "Hi, lovebirds," it said cheerfully. "If you're hearing this, you've probably made tea without me. I hope you didn't burn the toast again, Daniel." Lena laughed through tears. Daniel's smile trembled. The recording went on. Her mother talked about small things, her favorite flowers, how she missed her own mother, how love needed patience. Then her voice grew quieter. "If something ever happens to me," she said, "don't let sadness eat you. Live for me. Laugh for me. And if you ever feel lost, listen to this. I'm always right here. When the tape stopped, the silence felt sacred. Lena pressed her palm over her heart. I can't believe she recorded this, she whispered. Daniel nodded. She always thought ahead. She wanted to make sure we'd remember how to keep living. Lena sat down, her hands trembling slightly. It feels like she's still taking care of us. She always will, Daniel said quietly. For the rest of the morning, they listened to more tapes. Some were funny. Her mother complaining about how Daniel never folded laundry properly, or teasing Lena for leaving books all over the floor. Others were tender, stories about her childhood, dreams she never chased, advice for a future she knew she might not see. Each voice note was a thread, stitching the broken pieces of their hearts together. Later, Lena went to the attic with the tapes. She lined them neatly on a shelf beside her notebooks. This space had truly become hers now, filled with her mother's presence but shaped by her own voice. When Daniel came upstairs, she was sitting by the window writing again. What are you working on? He asked. A story, she said. About her, about us. About how love can survive through memories. He nodded thoughtfully. You found your way again. I think we both have, she replied, smiling gently. When she finally put the pen down, she felt lighter, as if she had finally said everything she had been holding inside. The next morning, she found Daniel in the kitchen again. He was holding another one of her mother's tapes. This one's labeled for you, he said, handing it over. Lena hesitated. For me? He nodded. You should listen to it alone. I think she meant it that way. Lena took the tape to the attic, her hands trembling. She placed it in the player, pressed play, and waited. Her mother's voice filled the room once more, softer this time. My sweet Lena, she said. If you're hearing this, it means you've grown. Maybe you're writing again. Maybe you're strong again. I want you to know that I see you. I'm proud of you. You are my greatest joy and my greatest peace. Tears streamed down Lena's face, but she was smiling. She whispered to the empty room, I'm okay, Mom. I promise. Outside, the sun rose higher, flooding the attic with warm, golden light. It felt like a blessing, quiet, unseen, but real. For the first time since the day everything changed, Lena didn't feel haunted by the past. She felt guided by it. Every sound in the house, every whisper of wind through the window, carried love instead of pain. And in that moment she knew, healing wasn't about moving on. It was about moving forward, carrying love in a new way, one gentle step at a time. The morning began with the smell of baking bread. Sunlight slipped across the kitchen floor and Lena moved around the counter with quiet ease, humming softly. The house felt completely different now, lighter, warmer, alive again. The emptiness that had once echoed through every corner had turned into a calm rhythm of everyday life. Daniel walked in holding a small envelope. Mail came early, he said, placing it on the table. This one's for you. Lena wiped her hands and opened it. Inside was a letter from a local publisher she had sent her short story 2 weeks ago. Her heartbeat quickened as she read the first line. Her hands began to shake. They want to publish it? She whispered in disbelief. Daniel's eyes lit up. Really, that's amazing, Lena. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. They said my story about Mom felt deeply human and full of hope. Daniel smiled proudly. She'd be so proud of you. Lena pressed the letter to her chest. I think she is. They stood there for a long moment, both smiling, both quiet. The joy felt pure, not loud or dramatic, just honest and full. Over the next few days, Lena worked on editing her story for publication. Daniel helped by reading drafts aloud in the evenings, sitting by the fire while she made notes. The story was titled The House That Stayed. It was about grief, but more than that, it was about learning to live again. When the printed copy arrived, Lena held it in her hands and stared at her name on the page. She had never felt prouder or more at peace. That night, she went to the attic to read her story aloud, to the same quiet walls that had once held her tears. This is for you, Mom, she whispered. Her voice was steady, full of life. She didn't cry this time. She smiled through every word. Afterward, Daniel joined her with 2 cups of tea. They sat by the window watching the evening settle. The sun dipped low, casting long golden streaks across the sky. You know, Daniel said, I've been thinking about moving back to my hometown. Lena turned to him, surprised. Really? He nodded. There's a small repair shop there. The owner's retiring and asked if I'd take over. It's something steady and it's time I started over too. The words sank in slowly. She felt a mix of sadness and understanding. You mean, leaving the house? He smiled gently. Not forever. You can stay here if you want. It's your home now. But I think I need a change. Somewhere quiet, somewhere to start fresh. Lena looked around. Every corner of this house carried their shared journey. Pain, healing, and growth. The thought of him leaving made her heart ache, but she also understood. Sometimes love meant letting someone go to find peace. She nodded slowly. I think that's good for you, Daniel. You've given so much to this place. You deserve a new beginning. He looked relieved. Thank you, Lena. I wasn't sure how to tell you. That night she couldn't sleep. She wandered through the house, touching the furniture, the walls, the little memories that lived in every room. It was strange. The idea of staying behind while someone who had helped her heal moved on. But deep down she knew this was right. Change wasn't loss. It was growth. The next morning, Lena helped him pack a few things. He kept it simple. Clothes, some tools, and her mother's framed photo. I'll leave this for you, he said, handing her the collection of tapes. They belong here, she smiled. I'll keep them safe. They shared breakfast quietly. Every sound, the clinking of cups, the soft scrape of chairs, felt heavy with meaning. Before leaving, Daniel stood at the front door and looked back one last time. Take care of yourself, Lena. I will, she said softly. And you too. He nodded, then added, remember, the garden needs sunlight, but it also needs space. Don't be afraid to live outside of memories. She understood. It wasn't just advice about flowers. It was about life. When he finally drove away, the sound of the engine faded down the long road, leaving behind a quiet she hadn't heard in a long time. But this time, it wasn't painful. It was peaceful. Lena walked into the garden. The roses were blooming again, red and bright, bending slightly under the morning dew. She touched one gently, smiling. She spent the afternoon rearranging the attic, turning it into a small writing room. She placed her mother's picture on the desk and added the letter from the publisher beside it. Later, as evening approached, she played one of the old tapes. Her mother's voice filled the room again, full of laughter. If you're listening, it means life has moved forward, her mother said on the recording. Good, it should. Don't stay still for me. Keep writing, keep dreaming, keep living. Lena closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks, but her smile was bright. I will, Mom, she whispered. That night she sat by the open window, watching stars blink into existence one by one. The wind carried the scent of roses and the soft whisper of life continuing. She wrote another line in her journal before bed. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without breaking. When she finally turned off the lamp, the house didn't feel empty. It felt alive, full of echoes of love, laughter, and voices that would never really fade. Lena lay down, listening to the quiet. It wasn't the silence of grief anymore. It was the silence of peace, gentle, steady, full of promise for whatever would come next. Spring came quietly that year. The trees outside the house bloomed early, their pale flowers scattering in the wind like tiny pieces of memory. The air was warm, soft, and full of light, the kind of weather her mother used to love. Lena stood by the open window, a gentle smile on her face. She had learned to breathe again, not just out of habit, but with purpose. Every breath felt alive. It had been 3 months since Daniel moved back to his hometown. The house was hers now, yet his presence lingered in small ways. The repaired shelf in the kitchen, the faint smell of varnish in the hallway, the garden he had helped her bring back to life. They spoke often, exchanging letters filled with updates, stories, and quiet affection that didn't need to be spoken out loud. Lena's life had changed in ways she hadn't expected. Her story had been published in a local magazine and received messages from strangers who said her words helped them through their own grief. For the first time, Lena felt that her pain had a purpose. Her mother's voice, once trapped in memories, now lived in her writing. That morning, she set up a small table by the garden window, her new workspace. Her second story draft lay open, pages scattered with edits and coffee stains. She had titled it, The Sound of Light. It was about beginnings disguised as endings, about finding beauty in the spaces loss leaves behind. She took a deep breath and began to write. Her pen moved slowly but steadily. Outside, the wind brushed through the garden, making the roses sway as if nodding in rhythm. Hours passed, and the sunlight drifted from one side of the room to the other. When she finally put down her pen, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Not perfection, but peace. Later, she walked outside, barefoot, letting the grass tickle her feet. The earth was cool and damp. She knelt near the rose bushes and whispered, "You'd like this, Mom. The house looks happy again." A soft wind passed through the leaves, as if answering her. In the evening, the phone rang. It was Daniel. His voice was lighter than she remembered. "How's the garden doing?" he asked. "Still growing," Lena said with a smile. "And so am I," he laughed softly. "That's good to hear. I miss that place sometimes." "You can visit any time," she said. "The door's always open." "I might take you up on that," he replied. There was a short pause, then he added, "Lena, I'm proud of you. Really proud. You did what she always wanted. You turned pain into something beautiful." Her eyes glistened. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You could have," he said gently. "You just needed time." They spoke for a while longer, sharing quiet moments and gentle laughter. When she hung up, Lena felt a warmth spread through her, not the sharp heat of loss, but the steady glow of gratitude. As night settled, she lit a small candle by her mother's picture. It had become her nightly ritual, not out of sadness, but as a way to say thank you. She sat by the flame, watching it flicker and dance. She remembered everything: the hospital, the empty nights, the confusion, the tears. But now those memories didn't hurt the same way. They were chapters of a story that had led her here. She understood now that grief wasn't an ending. It was a teacher. Lena picked up her notebook and began to write a letter. Not to Daniel, not to a publisher, but to her mother. "Dear Mom," she wrote, "I kept your garden alive. The roses still bloom every spring, and the attic has become my favorite place. I finished my first book, and people say they can feel your warmth in it. I think that's true. You never really left, did you? You're here. In every word, every laugh, every quiet sunrise. I'm not lost anymore. I'm learning how to live just like you told me." She closed the letter carefully and tucked it inside her mother's old journal, the one tied with a blue ribbon. Then she placed it on the shelf beside the tapes, completing the circle that had started months ago. When she went to bed that night, the air outside was still. The moonlight spread across her room like silver silk. For a long while she lay awake, listening to the faint hum of life. The clock ticking, the breeze whispering through the window, the world breathing softly around her. And then as sleep began to pull her under, she dreamed. She saw her mother in the garden, wearing that same summer dress with the floral prints, smiling under the morning sun. Her voice was warm and familiar. "You did it, Lena," her mother said in the dream. "You kept the light alive." Lena smiled through tears. "I tried." Her mother reached out, touched her cheek, and whispered, "You didn't just try. You grew." When Lena opened her eyes the next morning, the room was filled with golden light. The candle had burned down, but the scent of roses lingered faintly in the air. She got up, opened the window wider, and let the morning breeze in. Outside, the garden shimmered with dew. Birds moved through the branches, their songs soft and full of promise. Lena stood there for a long time, breathing it all in. The sound, the scent, the feeling of being alive. The past would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her. She had found something stronger than grief, deeper than loss. The quiet, enduring power of love that never really leaves. She smiled, picked up her pen, and began to write again. Not out of sadness, not out of memory, but out of joy. The kind that comes when the heart, after breaking, learns how to bloom once more.